She stood barefoot in our kitchen, humming while stirring her tea, when she told me she never loved me the way I thought she did. No shouting, no guilt, no tears, just steam rising from her cup and her eyes fixed on the floor, like she was reading instructions for how to break a man quietly. That morning, I had ironed her blazer before work, the navy one she wore to big meetings. She didn't thank me. She just said, "There's someone else, Quinn, and I think you already know." I didn't, but I nodded, because I didn't know how not to. Laurel always had a way of making cruelty sound like clarity. She said things with the confidence of someone giving a TED Talk, even when she was dismantling a life we built together. She made it sound like she wasn't choosing another man. She was choosing alignment. And the worst part? She was right. I did already know. The late returns. The turned-over phone. The laughter in the next room when she didn't know I was home early. The spa weekend that showed up as a hotel in Cleveland on our credit card, under his name, Reese Buckner, the consultant she swore was married with twins. I still remember her exact words that night. "Reese makes me feel alive. You make me feel like I'm waiting for something that'll never happen." I asked her if she was leaving. She said no. She said I should. So I did. I left my keys on the counter, packed a single bag, and walked out of the home I'd spent 12 years paying off. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't follow me out. She just stirred her tea like we were discussing groceries. That was 3 years ago. And 2 nights back, at a corporate event I wasn't supposed to attend, Laurel walked in with Reese on her arm, smiling like the woman who once broke me didn't exist anymore. Until she saw me, and her face shattered like a glass hitting the floor. Her smile died instantly, and the next thing I saw? Tears. Real ones. The kind she never cried when I left. And that's when I realized. She had no idea who I'd become. When she saw me, the room froze. Or maybe it just felt that way to her. I didn't blink. I didn't move toward her. I simply raised my glass, nodded politely like she was just another guest at the table, and turned back to the VP of strategy, who was explaining something about a merger I couldn't care less about. But I felt Laurel's stare burning into the side of my face. Reese, oblivious as ever, was already handing his business card to some junior associate with that smug grin of his. The man who made her feel alive now had graying temples, a paunch forming beneath his overpriced blazer, and the unmistakable air of someone who thought he'd won, and never questioned what the prize really cost. I hadn't seen Laurel in over 1,000 days. Not since I boarded a bus out of Coldwater and disappeared into the messiest chapter of my life. I didn't post on social media. I changed my number. I even started going by Q professionally. I didn't want to be found. I wanted to become unrecognizable, not just to her, but to myself. The man I used to be? That Quinn was soft around the edges, always too eager to please. That Quinn got walked on like an airport rug. He gave too much, apologized too fast, made excuses for a wife who spent weekends networking at art shows she never posted pictures from. I know now that those shows weren't real. That Laurel wasn't just drifting, she had already docked somewhere else. The funny thing is, I don't even remember the worst day. It wasn't the anniversary betrayal. It wasn't finding Reese cologne on her pillow. It was the slow erosion, the 1,000 tiny dismissals, the cold shoulder on a Tuesday, the missed calls she never returned, the way she introduced me to her colleagues as a tech guy, never my husband. After I left, I crashed at a friend's place in Tulsa, working nights as a data analyst and days as a warehouse temp just to reset my brain. I slept in a converted laundry room for 6 months, ate instant noodles, and read self-help books I used to mock. Then one day, I got an unexpected offer from a boutique firm that had seen my old project work. They brought me in for contract consulting. Within 2 years, I was promoted to director, then executive advisor, then keynote speaker for the very event where Laurel just saw me. Now, she stood across the ballroom, clutching her clutch too tight, eyes glossy with something that looked a lot like regret. Not because of who I was, but because she finally realized I wasn't him anymore. I wasn't the placeholder. I wasn't the man who ironed her blazer without being asked. I was the man she never thought I could be. And I was untouchable. When the speeches started, she stayed standing. I could see her from the side, breathing shallow, visibly shaken. Reese was on his phone. He didn't even notice. After my speech, I took the long way to the bar, just to pass by her. And as I walked past, she whispered, "Quinn." I didn't stop. I just smiled, nodded again, and said, "Placeholder, remember?" And kept walking. Her tears were silent, but everyone saw them, especially Reese. The rest of the evening unfolded like a movie I'd already seen, scripted, slow, predictable. Industry leaders making hollow toasts. Polished conversations swirling with artificial charm. But in the background, Laurel had unraveled. She tried to play it off, laughing too loudly, sipping her wine too quickly, even flirting with someone at the next table over. But I knew her tells. And what I saw wasn't a woman enjoying the evening. It was someone clinging to the illusion that she was still in control. Reese, ever clueless, eventually wandered toward me near the back patio where I stood talking with a couple of tech founders. He didn't recognize me at first. The beard, the suit, the posture, none of it matched the Quinn he remembered. He squinted, then smiled in that smarmy way of his and extended a hand. "You look familiar," he said, trying to place me like I was some background character he'd bumped into once. I didn't shake his hand. "You're standing in the same room as the man you replaced," I said flatly. His smile flickered. "Wait, Quinn." I nodded once. He looked me over, eyes narrowing. "Well, this is awkward," he muttered, scratching the back of his neck. "You've changed." "You haven't," I replied, and turned away. Reese muttered something under his breath and walked off. No confrontation, no grand scene. Just awkward silence, the kind that hangs in the air when the truth finally walks into the room and refuses to play dead anymore. An hour later, I saw Laurel standing alone near the elevator bay. Her lipstick had faded, her heels were off, dangling from her fingers like she didn't care who saw her exhausted. There was something strange about it, not pitiful, not desperate, just hollow. Like a woman who'd realized too late that she'd thrown away something solid for something shiny. I could have left right then, taken the elevator down, called a car, gone back to my hotel room, and let that be the end of it. But I didn't. I walked over. Not for closure. Not for revenge. Just because. I needed to hear her say it. Out loud. For once. She looked up at me, tired and glassy-eyed. "I didn't expect to see you here," she whispered. "That's the thing about consequences," I said. "They rarely RSVP." She gave a weak laugh, the kind she used to fake during dinner with my parents. "You look different." "You look the same," I replied, except sadder. She swallowed hard, and for a moment, she wasn't the Laurel who wrecked my life. She was just a woman standing barefoot on a tile floor, not knowing how to take back the things she never thought she'd regret. "I didn't know what I had until it was gone," she said finally. I stepped back. "That's not true," I said. "You knew. You just didn't care." And with that, I turned and walked away. Back to the elevator. Back to the life she no longer had access to. The life she thought she didn't need. The life I built from the wreckage she left behind. But that wasn't the end. Because what I didn't know that night was this. Laurel was keeping a secret. And 3 days later, that secret showed up at my office with a suitcase, a folder, and a story that changed everything I thought I knew. It was a Wednesday morning when the receptionist at my firm called my line and said, "There's a woman here to see you. Says it's personal." I almost said no. I had back-to-back meetings, a strategy review, and a lunch meeting with a potential investor. But something in the way she said personal made me pause. She give a name? Eden Maynard. That stopped me cold. Eden. My sister. Except, Eden had been living in Portugal for the last 6 years. I hadn't seen her since before the divorce. She'd always been distant, a bit of a nomad. We messaged occasionally, but she never came back stateside for more than a day or two at a time. For her to show up unannounced, in my office, with a suitcase? I told my assistant to clear the next hour. When Eden walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked thinner, paler, like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. She was holding a worn leather folder under one arm and her duffel bag with the other. No smile. No greeting. Just a flat, exhausted, "You need to sit down." My gut twisted. "What's going on?" "It's about Laurel," she said. I let out a bitter laugh. "She's not exactly my priority these days." "I know. But this isn't about you two anymore." Then she dropped the folder on my desk. Inside were emails, letters, a birth certificate, and one photo that almost made me black out. It was a boy. A little boy. Big gray blue eyes. Mine. My mother's nose. My awkward ears. "I don't understand," I said, my mouth dry. Eden stared at me. "Laurel got pregnant. Right before you left." "She didn't tell you." I couldn't breathe. She told Reese the baby wasn't his. But she didn't want to ruin her plans, her new life, so she cut you out. Claimed she miscarried. But she didn't. She had the baby in secret. gave custody to her sister under a fake guardianship so she wouldn't have to raise him. Laurel kept working, kept pretending. But now she wants out. I was numb. She's been sending money every month to keep it quiet. Her sister's tired of the arrangement. She reached out to me. Said the boy keeps asking about his dad. So I flew here. I leaned forward, hands on my head. Why didn't anyone tell me? She thought you'd destroy her reputation. Or take him away. She thought you'd hate her forever. She was right, I whispered. Eden stood. The kid's name is Jonah. He's 4. And he deserves to know who his father is. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. All I could do was stare at that photo. Jonah. For years of his life, stolen. Laurel had lied to me, robbed me of the one thing I thought I'd never have, a child. A legacy. A chance to be something more than the man she left behind. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out over the skyline I'd come to own. I had rebuilt everything: career, confidence, life from ashes. But this was different. This was blood. And if Laurel thought I was just going to disappear again, she had no idea who I'd become. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding that photo of Jonah like it was made of glass. For years, that number kept hammering in my chest like a warning bell I'd somehow ignored. I imagined his first words, his first steps. Did he laugh like me? Did he sleep on his side like I did as a kid? Had he already asked where his dad was? And what the hell kind of mother buries her child's identity like that? Laurel hadn't just stolen time. She'd rewritten an entire chapter of my life without my consent. She built a lie detailed enough to fool an entire family, a company, a man, and somehow still slept soundly every night. But not anymore. By sunrise, I was at my lawyer's office. Paul Weinberger, gray-haired, sharp-tongued, and allergic to BS, raised his brows when I laid the documents on his desk. This is big, Quinn. If what your sister brought you is real, and it looks damn real, you've got every right to pursue custody, maybe even press charges for concealment, falsifying parental status. But it's gonna get ugly. I don't care, I said. I want to meet him. That's all I care about right now. Paul nodded. We'll start with a formal request for paternity testing. Once that's confirmed, you can file for custodial rights. I don't want to fight with her, Paul. I want him safe. I want him to know who I am. Paul gave me a look I'll never forget, equal parts sympathy and caution. Quinn, she's not the woman you married anymore. She's the woman who erased you from your own son's life. Be ready for her to fight like hell to keep that control. That same afternoon, I reached out to Laurel's sister, Meredith, the woman who had been quietly raising Jonah this entire time under the radar. We met in a quiet park outside the city. She looked just like Laurel, except she had warmth in her eyes and a tiredness that came from raising a child you hadn't planned for. He thinks I'm his aunt, she said, barely above a whisper. He's smart, too. He started asking questions. I couldn't keep lying. Why didn't you call me sooner? I asked, trying not to let my anger bleed through. Because Laurel made it sound like you abandoned him. She said you knew, and you didn't care. That you didn't want kids. My chest tightened. She told me you were cruel, she added quietly. That you left because she got pregnant. I shook my head, eyes burning. That's the opposite of the truth. I figured, Meredith said, pulling out her phone. You want to see him? She showed me a video, Jonah running through a pile of autumn leaves, laughing hard. The sound hit me like a tidal wave. He was real. He was mine. And I had missed everything. Meredith looked at me with guilt in her voice. He deserves more than a secret life. But if you take this to court, it could destroy Laurel. And it could confuse him. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted, revenge or redemption. Maybe both. But I did know one thing. The next time I stood in front of Laurel, she wouldn't be the one with the power. That was over. She took everything from me once. This time, I would take everything back. 2 days later, Laurel showed up at my office without calling ahead. I was in the middle of a quarterly review meeting when my assistant whispered, "There's a woman downstairs. She won't leave. Says it's urgent. Says it's your ex-wife." My pulse didn't spike. I'd been expecting this. "Let her up," I said calmly. The room around me froze, sensing something heavy about to unfold. I dismissed the meeting, telling the execs we'd pick it up later. I needed to be alone for this. When the elevator doors opened, she walked out slowly, her face pale, jaw clenched, eyes flashing with something between panic and fury. Laurel always prided herself on control. Every outfit, every word, every breath curated. But not this time. Her blazer was wrinkled, her lipstick smudged, and she was holding her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "You talked to Meredith," she said without preamble. "You lied to me," I replied. She closed the office door behind her and leaned against it. I wasn't ready. I didn't know what I was doing. "Stop," I said, standing up. "Don't insult both of us by pretending this was confusion. You hid my son from me. You told your sister I abandoned you. You fabricated a miscarriage. Laurel, you crafted an entire story to erase me." She looked away, biting the inside of her cheek. "I thought it would be easier. For everyone. For you?" I snapped. "Not for him. Not for me. You decided for all of us." "I was scared," she whispered. "Reese didn't want the baby. He made me choose. And you had already walked away." I took a step closer, my voice low. "I walked away from you. Not from a child I didn't know existed." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel sorry. "Not this time. You didn't want me to be the father," I said. "That's what this was really about, wasn't it? You wanted a new life, and I didn't fit in it. So you rewrote the rules." "I didn't want to ruin your life," she said, barely audible. "You ruined mine anyway," I said, hands shaking. "And now? You're going to fix it." She stiffened. "What does that mean?" "It means I've already filed for paternity confirmation. Once it's official, I'm filing for joint custody. At the very least." Her eyes widened. "You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "And I will." Laurel slumped into the chair across from my desk. "Quinn, you don't know what it's like to raise a child alone. Even with Meredith helping." I was overwhelmed. Terrified. I wasn't thinking clearly. "Then you should have called me. You should have told me the truth," I said. There was a long silence. Then, in a voice that cracked for the first time since I'd known her, she said, "I thought if you saw him, you'd never forgive me." I sat down, looked her straight in the eye. "You're right." She flinched. "But this isn't about forgiveness anymore. It's about a boy who deserves a father. And I won't let you take that from him just because you couldn't handle your choices." Laurel stared at the carpet for what felt like an hour. Then, quietly, she said, "He knows your name. Meredith's been telling him stories. She kept some of your photos. He thinks you're far away on some adventure." I felt a lump in my throat. He deserves to know that I've been here the whole time, and that I never stopped being his father, even when I didn't know he existed. She nodded slowly. "You'll get the test results next week. After that, we'll talk." She stood up, wiped her eyes, and left the office without another word. And I sat there, alone in a glass tower I'd built from the ground up, staring out over the city I'd made mine, realizing this wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of a new one, but I had no idea what it would cost me next. The paternity results came in a week later, and even though I already knew the truth, seeing it printed in black and white, probability of paternity, 99.997%, knocked the breath out of me. I sat in my car in the parking garage beneath my building for almost 30 minutes, just staring at the page. I wasn't just someone's ex-husband anymore. I was a father. Legally. Unquestionably. Irrevocably. I didn't tell anyone at work. I didn't tell Eden. I just drove to the one place I hadn't been since I left Coldwater, Laurel's sister's neighborhood. I parked a few houses down and sat behind the wheel like a man trying to gather the courage to walk into a battlefield. And in many ways, that's exactly what it was. Except this time, I wasn't there to win or lose. I was there to meet someone who had unknowingly changed the entire meaning of my life. Meredith opened the door before I even knocked. I guess she saw me through the window. She smiled gently, gave me a quick nod, and stepped aside without a word. The house smelled like waffles and maple syrup. There were toys on the floor. A drawing on the fridge that said, "To Aunt Em, I love you big like the moon." And then I heard him. Small feet slapping against the hardwood floor. "Is he here? Is the man here?" I turned. And there he was. Jonah. 4 years old. Slightly messy dark hair. A blue t-shirt with a dinosaur on it. And those same gray-blue eyes that I'd been staring at in a photo for days. He stopped when he saw me. Just stared, tilting his head like he was studying me. "Are you the adventure man?" I choked on a breath. "What?" "And Em said my real dad is an adventure man. That he went far away to fix big problems." I knelt down. "I guess I am. But I'm here now." He walked up and touched my face, gentle and curious. "You look like me." I smiled, and my vision blurred. "No, buddy. You look like me." He giggled. I stayed for hours. Meredith made lunch and let us sit out on the back porch with a pile of coloring books and building blocks. Jonah talked nonstop. About dinosaurs. About the dog he wanted. About how sometimes the moon makes him feel sleepy and how his best friend in preschool smells like peanut butter. And through it all, I kept thinking, how could she keep this from me? How could Laurel look at this boy and think I wouldn't want to be his father? That night, I drove home and stared at the ceiling for hours. I couldn't stop replaying every moment. His laugh, the way he said adventure man, the way he leaned into me when he got tired, like he somehow already knew I was a safe place. The next morning, I filed the paperwork for shared custody. Laurel didn't fight it. Instead, she showed up at my apartment. No makeup, no mask, just a woman standing in the ruins of the life she thought would never catch up to her. I read the results, she said. I nodded. He's mine. She closed her eyes for a long moment. I told myself I did it to protect him. But I think I was really just trying to protect myself. From what? I asked. She opened her eyes. From knowing you'd be better at this than me. That he'd love you more. That stunned me. She wiped her eyes and continued. Reese left. Last month. I didn't tell anyone. He said being around Jonah made him feel like an outsider. Like he was a guest in his own life. And maybe he was. I didn't respond. I know you hate me, she added. I don't, I said after a pause. I don't think I feel anything toward you anymore. Just grief. For the time I lost. She nodded like she expected it. Then she handed me something. A small box. Inside was a bracelet, one of those cheap rubber ones kids wear. It said Jonah's dad and marker, the letters crooked and smudged. He made that after you left the other day. He's been asking when you're coming back. My throat closed. I'll bring him this weekend, she said softly. You can take him for the whole day. Start slow. As she left, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what Laurel took from me. I was thinking about what Jonah was giving me, a second chance. A new beginning. Not just for me, but for both of us. The first full day with Jonah felt like stepping into sunlight after years in a basement. He showed up on my doorstep wearing a tiny backpack, gripping a plastic tea, Rex in one hand and a juice box in the other. Laurel stood behind him, awkward and hesitant, as if unsure whether she should smile or apologize again. She didn't do either, just gave me a quiet nod, mouthed thank you, and turned back to her car. Jonah ran inside without a second thought, calling out, "Where's the dinosaur zoo?" I had no idea what that meant, but I improvised. I had spent the entire week converting my guest room into a makeshift playroom with a prehistoric theme, foam bones, glowing stars on the ceiling, a fold-out tent shaped like a cave. The second he saw it, he let out a sound so full of joy it almost knocked me over. "This is the best place ever," he yelled, diving into the stuffed dino pile. "You really are the adventure man." We spent the day at the Natural History Museum, where he bombarded the poor tour guide with questions about velociraptor speed and T-Rex poop. Then we got ice cream, ate pizza on the floor, and watched cartoons while he leaned his head against my side like he'd done it 100 times before. That night, I tucked him in, my son, under a blanket covered in stegosauruses. His eyes were heavy, but just before he drifted off, he whispered, "Are you staying this time?" I blinked away the heat behind my eyes. "Forever, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." He nodded sleepily. "Okay. You can be my adventure man forever then." I sat beside him long after he fell asleep. I watched him breathe. I watched his fingers twitch in dreamland. And I thought about everything that led here. The betrayal. The silence. The storm I'd been dragged through and the man I'd become on the other side of it. I was no longer a placeholder. I was no longer the man who ironed blazers for a woman who never saw him. I was no longer invisible in my own life. I was a father. And in that quiet room, filled with glow-in-the-dark planets and the soft hum of a sound machine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. In the weeks that followed, the custody agreement was finalized, shared, flexible, with Jonah spending weekends and summers with me. Laurel didn't fight it. She even apologized, truly apologized, and promised to rebuild trust not for me, but for Jonah's sake. Reese? Gone for good. No more lies. No more shadows. As for me, I kept my job, but scaled back my hours. I started volunteering at Jonah's preschool, learned how to pack lunchboxes like a pro, and became an expert at bedtime dinosaur trivia. People say life doesn't give you second chances. They're wrong. Sometimes, life gives you a first chance disguised as a disaster. And if you're lucky, if you survive the storm, you come out on the other side with something better than what you lost. You come out with purpose. And sometimes, a little boy with your eyes, holding a T-Rex in one hand and your heart in the other.